Hello and welcome, esteemed guests, to my channel. My name is Ainsley. Let's do stuff. Today we are doing the Random Genetics Challenge, or at least trying to until I get struck by some inspiration and things go in a bit of a different direction. I might go in there and play God a little bit more than I'm supposed to, but I really like the way it turns out in the end, so hopefully you won't mind. Here I am making the first parent. I decided to use 5 random roles for every different thing that you can change. Now, I will admit up front that I didn't remember that you could change the entire face shape, but I did randomize the starting sim, so let's say that counts for that. I find the hardest part of this challenge is not to give in to the temptation to go in and tweak things. I'm usually very meticulous when making sims, so this was definitely the challenge part of the Random Genetics Challenge. What I do appreciate about this challenge, if you'll bear with me and let me get deep for a moment, is that it forces you to see the beauty in features you might otherwise write off as duds. There are so many beauty standards in our society that we internalize, and even me who likes to sit down and deconstruct those a lot and think a lot about the way that I view the world and that I view beauty, I found myself disappointed or having negative thoughts about some of the randomized roles that I got, when really those are representative of real people and the way people really look. So I appreciated the opportunity to do a little bit of critical thinking. I always appreciate the opportunity to do a little bit of critical thinking. It's one of the core facets of my personality. And this has been Social Commentary with Ainsley, something I quickly see becoming a regular feature in my Create a Sim videos. Let me know if you like a little bit of intellectual discussion with your cast vids. I am more than happy to provide. Here we're working on Molly Wisniewski, our mom sim for this challenge. She randomized with those deep set eyes that I hardly ever use but really like. I should use those more often. She also ended up with some 90s supermodel brows, which I learned to love the longer I sat with them. They lend a unique quality to her character design. I can picture her as a teenager over plucking her brows because it's what was on trend and it's what all the cool kids were doing, and now they don't quite grow back right. I did change her eyebrow color back to brown just because the game doesn't quite know what to make of these custom content hairs, so it didn't know how to match the root color. Even just randomizing these sims, I started to develop an idea of the kind of characters they would be. It's incredible how much a sim can really come to life on you. I started picturing Brayden, the dad, and Molly as high school sweethearts who were maybe a bit of a renegade couple in their youth. I had them both set to young adult, so I thought maybe they had had a child together while they were still in high school. That ends up being their son that I'm working on now, who is a teenager. Because Brayden and Molly have a lot of quite opposite features, I was really interested in seeing what their child would look like. When I was in elementary school, my mother bought me a book on genes and DNA, and I loved that thing. I read it so many times over. I used to make up games where I would write a bunch of different genes on pieces of paper and put them in 2 separate bags, one for each parent, and then draw them at random to see which traits were passed on. So really, I've been playing with genetics since long before The Sims 4 was around. Here you can see me adding some eyeliner to Otto, the son. I pictured Otto as really getting along with his father and having a lot of his same personality traits and also having that same rebel spirit. I had an outfit in mind for him, but it's one I had already used on a sim that I'm thinking about using in a Let's Play, so I didn't want to copy that look. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in seeing a Let's Play. I'm thinking of saving it for when I have a few more subscribers, but it's also a storyline that I'm just dying to share with people. So we'll see how long I hold out. I also gave Otto a few tattoos. One, in fact, that he'll share with his father. I didn't want to go crazy since I see him as being at most 16. I figured by that age he'd probably also have some piercings, so I went ahead and added those and did just slightly adjust the ears so that the piercings would fit. I figured that would be fine. I thought about giving Molly and Brayden another child to extend the the view time of this video, but then I thought, well, if they had been together in high school, maybe they didn't stay together. Maybe Molly remarried and had another child. So now I'm creating the other father, her new husband. I thought that would also make it interesting to see the difference between the new child and Otto, who has a different father. It really seems sometimes like particular features are more dominant. Some Sims genetics tend to just take over in the look of their offspring, so I wanted to see what would happen. At this point in the process between the skin tone and the eye shape, I was picturing a Sim of Asian descent, but that does end up changing later on as we randomize more things. I like the way the randomness of this challenge gives you things to work with that you wouldn't come up with yourself. And this is the exact point where this becomes less random genetics challenge and more Ainsley Plays God. Between the afro-textured hair and the very pale skin tone, I was suddenly picturing a Sim of African descent with albinism. So from here on out, I do change a few things that were randomly generated to better suit that idea. When I start playing with genetics, I end up with very pale offspring. I wasn't sure albinism worked that way. Cue a research binge, and I'm back, armed with more information. From what I understood, albinism affects the ability to produce melanin, but not necessarily the genetic markers that indicate high presence of melanin. So Nelson's offspring likely would have darker skin, but that was never going to happen unless I set his skin tone as dark myself. I go back and change it to that super pale shade once I'm done playing with genetics. I also gave him a pair of glasses, as albinism can affect people's vision. And though it didn't seem as common, I also gave him some freckle details to imitate forms of albinism where there are still areas of the skin that produce pigment. I was really inspired by those images when I was going through online and looking for references. I decided to give Nelson and Molly a daughter, as well as to have her be a child, just to make sense with this timeline that I've invented in my head, and to do something different from the son that I had done the first time around. Right off the bat, she's the most adorable Sim I've ever seen. And how cute does that hair look on her? I like the way it frames her face. I gave her a soft blush and some nose shine to add to that adorable look. As for her clothing, I thought she might dress a bit more casual the way her father does, much like Otto emulates his father. I imagined Nelson as a writer, so likewise I made Daniela a creative type. Here I am picking out Nelson's traits. I wanted to make a bit more of a reserved Sim, not necessarily stuffy because I don't see Molly with a stuffy person, but definitely less of a wild card than her boyfriend in adolescence. I also went back and added skin details to the parents. I didn't think I was going to. I also didn't think I was going to give them full outfits, but the more I worked with the family, the more I really liked them as people, so I did some of that just off camera to round them out. You can see the arrow tattoo I gave Braden on his arm to match Otto's. I also gave Molly some tattoos. She has a pair of wings on her back that I showed you when she's in her formal dress. I figured that she'd have gotten some ink as a teenager too. She has the same bands on her wrist as her son. I think he probably got them to honor her and not with her the way he probably got his arrow tattoo with his father. I think Molly wants for Otto to have a much more stable teenhood than she did, where I think his father wants him to be a little mini Braden and a bit of a renegade himself. I don't see Nelson as stuffy, but I think Otto probably does. I don't imagine him getting along super well with his stepfather, even though I see Daniela as a total daddy's girl. I set up relationships in the family, if you download them from the gallery, that was hinting towards a storyline where Otto is trying to get his parents back together. I was also curious to see what Daniela would look like as a teen, because as a child they don't necessarily have all their features cemented yet, so I aged her out to take a look. I had a lot of fun with this challenge, even though I broke the rules a bit towards the end. I love looking at these side-by-side photos to see if I can get a look at who looks more like who. Otto definitely looks like his father. I don't see much of his mother in him at all. Whereas Daniela is split. When she's a child, I find she looks a lot like her mother, but the teen version of her does have a lot of her father's features, especially the nose. That's what I really like about playing Households for Generations. You get to see which little genetic bits pass on. Let me know in the comments if you like playing with legacy families, and why. Is it to pass on the genetics, or maybe to pass on the money? I know the money's a bonus for me when I play. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and consider leaving a comment and subscribing. I thrive on feedback. Until next time, get out there and do stuff.